Duke Harrison thought he had seen everything money could buy. But on that stormy October night, when he found two elderly strangers huddled outside his estate gates, soaked to the bone and clutching each other like the world had forgotten them, he had no idea his entire life was about to unravel. What he discovered when he opened his car trunk to find them an umbrella would force him to confront a truth he had buried for 30 years, a truth that would cost him everything he thought mattered and give him the only thing that ever did. But before we continue, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and write in the comments where you are watching this video from. The rain hammered against the windshield of the black Mercedes sedan like bullets, relentless and cold. Duke Harrison gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his knuckles white against the leather. 48 years old, Chief Executive Officer of Harrison Commercial Properties, worth north of $200 million, and he was driving himself home at 11:30 on a Tuesday night because his driver had called in sick. The irony was not lost on him. Duke had just closed a deal that would net his company another $12 million in the next fiscal quarter. The celebration dinner with the investors had run long, expensive wine flowing freely, handshakes and congratulations all around, but the victory felt hollow, as they always did these days, empty. The gates of his estate appeared through the sheets of rain, wrought iron and imposing, separating his world from everyone else's. Duke pressed the remote clipped to his sun visor, and the gates began their slow mechanical swing inward. That was when he saw them. Two figures pressed against the stone wall just outside his property line, elderly, hunched beneath the sparse branches of an oak tree that offered almost no protection from the downpour. The man had his arms wrapped around a woman, trying to shield her with his body. They were both drenched, clothes plastered to their frames, and they were not moving, just standing there as if they had nowhere else to go. Duke's first instinct was to drive through, not his problem. The city had shelters for this. He paid enough in taxes to fund half of them, but something made him stop. Duke sat there, engine idling, windshield wipers beating their steady rhythm, studying the couple through the rain-blurred glass. The man was tall but stooped, probably mid-70s, with white hair matted to his skull. The woman was smaller, fragile-looking, and even from this distance, Duke could see she was shaking. They were not panhandlers. Their clothes, though soaked, were clean. They had a dignity about them, a quiet desperation that spoke of recent catastrophe rather than chronic homelessness. Duke killed the engine and sat in the sudden silence, broken only by the drumming rain on the roof. His therapist, Dr. Marianne Chen, whom he had been seeing weekly for the past 6 months, would probably call this a moment of clarity, a chance to connect with something real. Or maybe it was just guilt. Duke opened the door and stepped into the storm. The cold rain hit him immediately, soaking through his $1,500 suit in seconds. He popped the trunk and grabbed the emergency kit he kept there, pulling out a large golf umbrella. As he approached the couple, the man noticed him and straightened slightly, instinctively moving to protect the woman. "Sir?" Duke called over the rain, opening the umbrella above him. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The man studied Duke with eyes that had seen too much. "We are fine, thank you. Just waiting for the rain to ease." His voice was educated, refined, not what Duke expected. "You will catch pneumonia out here," Duke said, moving closer and extending the umbrella to cover them both. "How long have you been standing in this?" The woman spoke then, her voice soft and strained. "A few hours, maybe. We lost track of time. A few hours." Duke felt something twist in his chest. "I am Duke Harrison," he said, keeping the umbrella steady above them. "This is my property." "Why are you here? Specifically here?" The man and woman exchanged a glance, a wordless communication born of decades together. Finally, the man spoke. "We were walking, trying to find shelter. Your wall provided some protection from the wind. We did not mean to trespass or cause concern." "You are not trespassing, you are outside my gate." Duke paused, then made a decision that surprised even himself. "Come inside, out of this storm. I have a guest house where you can dry off, warm up." "That is very kind, but we could not impose," the woman said, though hope flickered in her eyes. "You are not imposing. I am offering." Duke gestured toward the open gate. "Please, my name is Duke. What are yours?" The man hesitated, then extended a weathered hand. "James Whitmore. This is my wife, Catherine. We have been married for 52 years. Duke shook his hand, feeling the calluses, the strength still present, despite age. 52 years. That is quite an achievement. The only one that matters, James said quietly. They walked through the gate together, Duke keeping the umbrella over James and Catherine while getting soaked himself. The estate stretched before them, immaculate lawns now mud-soaked, the main house lit up like a monument 300 yards away. Duke led them not to the main house but to a smaller structure to the right, a guest cottage he kept for business associates who visited from out of town. Catherine stumbled on the path, her legs giving out, and James caught her with practiced ease. But Duke saw the tremor in the old man's arms, the exhaustion in both their faces. "When did you last eat?" Duke asked. Another exchanged glance. "Yesterday morning," Catherine admitted. Yesterday morning. Nearly 36 hours. Duke unlocked the guest house and ushered them inside, flipping on lights that revealed a space more luxurious than most people's homes. Hardwood floors, leather furniture, a full kitchen, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom with a walk-in shower. Everything first class. Catherine looked around with barely concealed wonder. "This is beautiful." "The shower has excellent water pressure," Duke said, moving to the thermostat and cranking up the heat. "There are robes in the bathroom closet, towels, toiletries. Take your time. Get warm. I will bring food." "Mr. Harrison," James began, but Duke cut him off. "Duke. Just Duke. And this is not charity. This is basic human decency." He paused at the door. "Do you have any other clothes? Luggage?" James and Catherine looked at each other again, that silent communication, and Duke saw something pass between them. Shame, maybe, or resignation. "We have 1 suitcase," James said finally. "We left it hidden near the bus stop 3 blocks from here. We were afraid someone might steal it if we brought it with us while we walked. I will send someone to retrieve it." "What does it look like?" "Brown leather. Old but well maintained. It has initials on the side, JW and CW in gold lettering." Duke nodded. "I will have it here within the hour. Now please go get warm before you both end up in the hospital." He left before they could protest further, jogging through the rain back to the main house. His housekeeper, Rosa Martinez, who lived in a separate apartment on the property, met him at the door with a towel and a look of concern. "Mr. Harrison, you are soaked through. What happened?" "I need you to prepare food, Rosa. Something hot, substantial. Soup, bread, whatever we have. Enough for 2 elderly people who have not eaten in over a day." Rosa did not ask questions, bless her. She had worked for Duke for 8 years and knew when to simply execute. While she headed to the kitchen, Duke went to his study and picked up his phone, calling his head of security, Marcus Webb. "Marcus, I need you to do something. 3 blocks west of the main gate there is a bus stop. Near it, hidden somewhere, is a brown leather suitcase with the initials JW and CW in gold. I need you to find it and bring it to the guest house." "Sir, is everything all right?" "Everything is fine. Just find the suitcase. Do not open it. Bring it directly to me." "Understood. Give me 20 minutes." Duke hung up and stood at the window, watching rain stream down the glass. What was he doing? He did not know these people. They could be con artists, criminals, anything. But something in his gut told him they were not. Something in the way James protected Catherine, in the exhaustion in their eyes, in the simple dignity they maintained despite their circumstances. He changed into dry clothes, then went to the kitchen where Rosa had prepared a tray with chicken soup, fresh bread, butter, coffee, and water. Duke took it himself, ignoring Rosa's offer to deliver it. When he returned to the guest house, he found James and Catherine in the living room, both in the provided robes, their wet clothes hanging in the bathroom. They looked smaller somehow, more vulnerable without the armor of their own clothes, but they also looked relieved, warming themselves by the electric fireplace Duke had switched on. "Food," Duke announced, setting the tray on the coffee table. "Eat, please." They did not need further encouragement. They ate slowly but steadily, and Duke watched as color returned to their faces, as Catherine stopped shivering, as James's hands steadied around the soup bowl. "Thank you," Catherine said after a while. "You have no idea what this means to us." "Tell me how you ended up outside my gate in a thunderstorm," Duke said, settling into a chair across from them. James set down his soup bowl carefully, precisely, the gesture of a man who had spent a lifetime being deliberate. "It is not a short story." "I have time," Duke said, and he did. For the first time in years, he had all the time in the world. Catherine looked at her husband, and something unspoken passed between them. A decision made. James nodded and began. We lived in Boston for 47 years, same house in Beacon Hill. I was a professor at Boston University Department of History. Catherine taught piano privately and performed with the Boston Chamber Orchestra. We raised 2 children there, built a life. Duke noticed the past tense. What happened? We got old, Catherine said simply, and America is not kind to people without money when they get old. But you had a house, careers. Surely there was retirement. James's expression darkened. There was. A pension from the university, social security, savings. We were not wealthy, but we were secure, or so we thought. 7 years ago, Catherine continued, I had a stroke, a bad one. I survived, but the medical bills, even with insurance, were staggering. We paid what we could, but it depleted our savings. Then 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, James added. His hands shook slightly as if to emphasize the point. Early stage, manageable with medication, but medication is expensive. My pension covered some, but not all. Duke felt a familiar anger rising. The American healthcare system, the one his taxes helped fund, the one that somehow never seemed to help the people who actually needed it. We managed, James said. We cut back, lived carefully. But last year, our son, our oldest child, he got into financial trouble. Business ventures that went bad. Debts he could not pay. Let me guess, Duke said. He asked for help. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. He begged, said he would lose everything, that his family would be on the street. What were we supposed to do? He is our son. We took out a reverse mortgage on the house, James said, the words clearly painful. Gave him $80,000, every penny we could access. He promised to pay it back within a year, said his business would recover. Duke already knew how this story ended. He had seen it play out 1,000 times in his business dealings. He did not pay you back, Duke stated. Worse, Catherine whispered. He disappeared, changed his phone number, moved without telling us where. We have not heard from him in 14 months. And your daughter? Duke asked, remembering James had mentioned 2 children. James's jaw clenched. Our daughter, Rebecca. She sided with her brother. Said we were foolish to give him the money, that we should have known better. When we asked her for help after we could not make the reverse mortgage payments, she said she had warned us about him, that we had made our own bed. The cruelty of it struck Duke hard. Not strangers or corporations, but their own children abandoning them. We lost the house 6 weeks ago, James continued. The bank foreclosed. We had nowhere to go. Rebecca offered to let us stay in her garage apartment, but only if we paid rent, $700 a month. Did you have $700? Duke asked, though he knew the answer. We had my pension check, $940 a month. Between that and Catherine's social security of $520, we had enough, barely. But then Rebecca decided we were too much trouble, said we made too much noise, that we were interfering with her life. She gave us 2 weeks' notice. Can she even do that legally? When you are old and poor, legality matters less than people think, Catherine said bitterly. We left 3 days ago. Have been sleeping in shelters when we could get a bed, on the street when we could not. Why here? Duke asked. Why this city? You said you lived in Boston. James and Catherine exchanged another of their meaningful glances. This one lasted longer, heavy with something Duke could not quite identify. Because, James said slowly, we needed to find someone. Someone we helped a very long time ago. Duke felt something cold settle in his stomach. Who? A young man, Catherine said. 30 years ago, maybe 31. He was 17, 18 years old. His name was David. David Harrison. The room tilted. Duke gripped the armrest of his chair, his knuckles white. David was my younger brother, Duke said quietly. He died 30 years ago. Overdose. We know, James said gently. We were there. Not when he died, but before. Months before. Duke's mind reeled. What are you talking about? Catherine leaned forward, her eyes searching Duke's face. 30 years ago, I was performing at a charity concert in downtown Boston. Afterward, I found a young man in the alley behind the theater, unconscious, barely breathing. He had overdosed on heroin. I called an ambulance, stayed with him until they arrived. Duke could not breathe. His brother David had told him about that night, about the woman who saved his life, who visited him in the hospital, who helped get him into a rehab program. The hospital connected us with him, James continued. We had no children at the time who were that age. We thought maybe we could help, be mentors. We visited him twice a week for 6 months while he went through treatment. He told us about his family, about his older brother Duke, who was away at college, about how he felt like he had disappointed everyone. "He never told me who you were," Duke whispered. "He just said a couple had been helping him. I never asked for details. I was too focused on my studies, my future." "David did well for about 8 months," Catherine said, tears streaming down her face now. "He got clean, got a job, started taking community college classes. He talked about you constantly. How proud he was of his brother at Harvard. How he wanted to make you proud, too." Duke felt something breaking inside him. He had been at Harvard when David died, buried in his studies, building the foundation for the empire he would create. He had not even come home for Thanksgiving that year because he had an important exam. "We were supposed to meet him for coffee on the morning he died," James said, "but Catherine had a migraine, and I called to reschedule. He said it was fine, that he understood. We found out 3 days later that he had relapsed that same night, overdosed in his apartment, alone. It was not your fault," Duke said automatically, though his voice sounded hollow. "We have told ourselves that for 30 years, Catherine said, but we never stopped wondering what would have happened if I had not had that migraine, if we had met him that morning, if we had been there." Duke stood abruptly, walking to the window, staring out at the rain that showed no sign of stopping. "Why did you come looking for me?" "Because David carried something with him always," James said. "A photograph of him and you and your parents. On the back, he had written your name and Harvard Business School, and underneath, he's going to change the world. We kept that photograph all these years. When we lost everything, when we ended up on the street, I thought about that young man who believed so fiercely in his brother. I thought maybe, after all these years, we could ask that brother for help." Duke turned to face them. "Do you still have the photograph?" "In our suitcase," Catherine said. "Along with letters David wrote to us thanking us for our help. He was a beautiful writer, did you know that?" Duke did not trust himself to speak. He had not let himself think about David, really think about him, in decades. The guilt was too heavy, the grief too sharp. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Marcus stood there holding a battered brown leather suitcase, rain dripping from his security uniform. He handed it to Duke without a word, professional as always, though his eyes were curious. "Thank you, Marcus, that will be all tonight." Duke brought the suitcase inside and set it on the coffee table. James and Catherine looked at it with an expression Duke recognized from his own mirror, the look of people who owned so little that each possession carried enormous weight. "May I?" Duke asked, gesturing to the suitcase. James nodded. "It is not locked." Duke opened it carefully. Inside was precisely organized. A few changes of clothing neatly folded. Toiletries in a clear plastic bag, a worn Bible, a jewelry box that probably contained whatever pieces Catherine had not been forced to sell, and there, in a manila envelope, photographs and papers. Duke opened the envelope with shaking hands. The photograph was on top, faded and creased from years of handling. David, maybe 19 years old, grinning at the camera with that infectious smile Duke had almost forgotten. Next to him, Duke himself at 21, serious even then, arm around his brother's shoulders. Their parents on either side, still alive then, still whole. Duke flipped it over. The handwriting was David's, unmistakable. Duke Harrison, Harvard Business School. He's going to change the world. The words hit Duke like a physical blow. He had changed the world in a way. Built a real estate empire, created jobs, made billions in transactions. But had he actually changed anything that mattered? "There are letters too," Catherine said softly. "From David. He wrote to us after every meeting, thanking us, telling us what he was learning, sharing his hopes." Duke read them. All 27 letters, written over 6 months by a young man trying desperately to build a life worth living, grateful for 2 strangers who cared when his own family was too busy. Duke did not sleep that night. He sat in his study in the main house, David's letters spread across his desk, reading and rereading them until the words blurred together. Each letter was a ghost, a whisper from a past he had tried to bury under success and money and the relentless forward motion of building an empire. David had written about wanting to be an artist, a painter. Duke had forgotten that. Or maybe he had never really paid attention. David had written about feeling like he was finally finding himself, discovering who he could be without drugs, without the weight of family expectations. In the last letter, dated 2 weeks before he died, David had written, James and Catherine believe in me. I hope someday Duke will too. I know he thinks I'm a failure, and maybe I have been, but I'm going to prove to him that I can be someone worth knowing, someone who makes him proud. Duke closed his eyes against the tears. David had died believing his brother was ashamed of him, and the worst part was it had been true. Duke had been ashamed, frustrated, angry that his brilliant younger brother was throwing his life away. He had loved David, but he had not known how to show it, and then it had been too late. At 6 in the morning, Duke called his lawyer, Sharon Reeves. She answered on the third ring, her voice sharp despite the early hour. "This better be important, Duke. I was actually sleeping. I need you to set up a trust. Immediately, full funding, bulletproof legal structure." Sharon was quiet for a moment. "For who?" "2 people, James and Catherine Whitmore. I will send you their information. The trust needs to provide them with a guaranteed income of $5,000 per month for the rest of their lives, plus cover all medical expenses, housing costs, and emergency needs. Duke, that is going to cost you at least $2 to $3 million, probably more depending on their life expectancy and healthcare needs. I do not care about the cost. Can you have the paperwork ready by tomorrow? I can have it ready by tonight if you need it that badly. But Duke, who are these people? People I should have found 30 years ago." Duke made breakfast himself, something he had not done in years. Scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, fresh fruit. He loaded everything onto a tray and carried it to the guest house, finding James and Catherine awake, dressed in their own clothes, now dry, sitting close together on the sofa. They looked better in daylight, rested, still elderly and fragile, but with a resilience Duke recognized now. These were people who had survived, who had loved each other through decades of joy and hardship, who had lost everything and still maintained their dignity. "I read David's letters," Duke said without preamble, setting down the breakfast tray. "All of them." Catherine's hand went to her mouth. "We should not have brought them. It must have been so painful." "I needed the pain," Duke said. "I have been avoiding it for 30 years. My brother died thinking I was ashamed of him, and I was too much of a coward to ever tell him otherwise." "He knew you loved him," James said gently. "He told us once that you called him from Harvard, that you talked for 2 hours about his art, that you said you were proud of him for getting clean. He treasured that conversation." Duke did not remember that call, or maybe he did, buried under years of deliberate forgetting. "I failed him. I was not there when he needed me most." "You were 21 years old," Catherine said. "A kid yourself. You cannot carry that guilt forever, Duke. But I can do something now." Duke sat down across from them. "I spoke with my lawyer this morning. I am setting up a trust fund in your names. $5,000 per month for the rest of your lives, all medical expenses covered, housing costs, emergency funds. You will never have to worry about money again." The silence that followed was profound. James and Catherine stared at him, and Duke saw something he had not expected. Resistance. "That is too much," James said finally. "We came looking for help, yes, but not charity, not millions of dollars." "It is not charity," Duke said firmly. "It is repayment. You saved my brother's life once. You gave him months of hope and dignity. That is worth more than any amount of money I could ever give you." "Duke," Catherine said carefully, "we appreciate this more than you can know, but we cannot accept millions of dollars from you. It would not be right." Duke had anticipated this. These were people who had given away their own money to help their son, who had worked their entire lives, who maintained dignity even when living on the street. Of course, they would refuse simple charity. "Then let me propose something different," Duke said. "I own properties all over this city, residential buildings, mostly middle-income housing. I need someone to manage the community aspects, to work with tenants to help create actual communities, instead of just places where people live and never speak to each other. You two have experience in education, in music, in building things that matter. Work for me. Earn the income I am offering." James and Catherine looked at each other, that silent communication flowing between them again. Duke was beginning to understand what 52 years of marriage looked like. It looked like being able to have entire conversations without saying a word. "What would this job actually entail?" James asked, and Duke knew he had them. "I own a property in Cambridge, 96 units, working-class families mostly, some elderly residents, some young professionals. It has a community room that sits empty 95% of the time. I want you to turn it into something real. Programs for kids, maybe a piano lessons for whoever wants them, history lectures, book clubs. Whatever you think would help people connect with each other. You would have an apartment in the building, rent-free, plus the $5,000 monthly salary. That is still too much for what you are describing, James protested. I am paying for your expertise, Duke countered. I am paying for 52 years of marriage that demonstrates you know how to build something that lasts. I am paying for the kindness you showed my brother when no one else would. And I am paying because I can and because it is the right thing to do. Catherine wiped tears from her eyes. We would need to see the space first. Make sure we could actually do what you are asking. Of course, we can go today if you want. Right now. The rain had stopped by the time they drove to Cambridge. Duke insisted on driving himself again, with James in the passenger seat and Catherine in the back. They talked during the drive, cautiously at first, then with increasing ease. Duke learned that James had specialized in American labor history, that he had written 2 books about the rise of unions in the 19th century. Catherine told him about the students she had taught, some of whom had gone on to professional music careers. Did you ever resent it? Duke asked. Spending your life helping other people, only to end up with nothing yourselves? We did not end up with nothing, Catherine said firmly. We ended up with each other. With memories of students we helped, of music we made, of lives we touched. That is not nothing. The Cambridge property was a 6-story brick building dating from the 1970s, well-maintained but aging. Duke parked in the visitor lot and led them inside. The community room was on the first floor, a large space with worn carpeting and fluorescent lighting, empty except for a few folding tables and chairs stacked against one wall. It is not much to look at now, Duke admitted. James walked the perimeter slowly, and Duke saw the professor in him emerge, the analytical mind assessing possibilities. Catherine moved to the windows, testing the acoustics with a few soft notes hummed in perfect pitch. The acoustics are actually quite good, she said, surprised. High ceilings, good natural sound reflection. We could divide the space, James mused. Create separate areas for different activities. Put a stage in that corner for performances. Bookshelves along that wall for a lending library. They were already envisioning it, Duke realized, already seeing not what it was, but what it could become. There is a piano in storage, Duke said. Not a great one, but serviceable. I bought it for a property and never used it. You could have it brought here, have it tuned. Catherine's eyes lit up. Really? Oh, I have not played regularly in 2 years, since we sold our piano to help pay bills. Then consider it yours, Duke said. Everything in this building is at your disposal, if it helps you create what you are imagining. Duke showed them the apartment next. 4th floor, 2 bedrooms, updated kitchen, living room with decent natural light. Not luxurious by Duke's standards, but clean, safe, warm. Everything they did not have. Catherine walked through the rooms slowly, touching the walls, testing the water pressure in the bathroom sink, opening and closing cabinet doors in the kitchen. James stood at the living room window, looking out at the street below, at the neighborhood they would potentially call home. There is a grocery store 2 blocks away, Duke said. Good public transportation. The building has a mix of tenants, but it is a quiet place. Respectful. Duke, James said without turning from the window, why are you really doing this? The truth. Duke had been expecting this question. He owed them honesty. Because I spent 30 years building an empire, and 0 years building anything that mattered. Because I have more money than I could spend in 5 lifetimes, and what good has it done me? I live alone in a mansion with a housekeeper I barely speak to. I work 16-hour days because I have nothing else to do. I am 48 years old, and I have never been married, never been in love, never created anything except wealth. My brother died believing I was ashamed of him, and maybe I was, and I never got to tell him I was sorry. The words came out raw, unfiltered, more honest than Duke had been with anyone in years, including his therapist. You gave him hope when I was too selfish to see he needed it, Duke continued, and when you needed help, your own children abandoned you. So yes, I want to do this. I want to give you what they should have given you, dignity, security, purpose. And I want to learn from you how to be the kind of person who still believes in things after life has taken everything away. Catherine came to stand beside her husband, and they both turned to face Duke. Catherine was crying openly now, and even James had tears in his eyes. We will do it, James said. We will take the job, take the apartment, and we will make that community room into something special, but on one condition. Name it, Duke said. You have to be involved, not just as the landlord or the boss, but as part of what we are building. You have to come to the programs we create, meet the people, be present. Can you do that? Duke thought about his schedule, the endless meetings, the deals that always seemed urgent. Then he thought about David's letters, about the words, "He's going to change the world," written by a young man who just wanted his brother to be proud. "Yes," Duke said, "I can do that." The next 4 weeks passed in a blur of activity that exhausted Duke in ways he had not experienced since building his first commercial property 15 years ago. But this exhaustion was different. It felt purposeful. James and Catherine moved into the Cambridge apartment on a Saturday. Duke hired movers, though they had almost nothing to move beyond the contents of their suitcase. He took them shopping, bought them furniture, kitchenware, linens. Catherine cried in the bedding department when she realized she could pick anything she wanted, that money was not an object. "I have not bought new sheets in 8 years, she admitted. "We always made do, always saved for emergencies." "Well, here is a new emergency," Duke said, loading high-thread count Egyptian cotton into the cart. "You must have comfortable sheets." They worked on the community room together. Duke hired contractors for the big jobs, refinishing floors, updating lighting, building the stage James had envisioned. But they did much of the work themselves. Duke found himself painting walls at 10 at night, his expensive suits replaced by jeans and old T-shirts he did not even remember owning. Rosa, his housekeeper, noticed the change immediately. "Mr. Harrison, you look different, lighter somehow." "I feel different," Duke admitted. And he did. The piano arrived on a Wednesday, a beautiful old Steinway that Duke had found in storage from a property acquisition 10 years ago. He had it fully restored before delivery, tuned by the best piano technician in the city. When Catherine first sat down to play it, her hands shaking slightly as they touched the keys, Duke watched from the doorway as she played Chopin, filling the community room with music that made grown men cry. "She has not lost any of her gift," James said, standing beside Duke. "Even after all these years, all the hardship." "Some things do not diminish," Duke replied. "They just wait for the right moment to resurface." They held their first community event 6 weeks after James and Catherine moved in. Catherine offered free beginner piano lessons for any children in the building. James advertised a weekly American history discussion group. Duke, keeping his promise, attended both. The piano lessons drew 8 children on the first day, ranging from age 6 to 12. Duke watched Catherine work with them, patient and encouraging, finding something to praise in even the most discordant attempts at "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." One girl, maybe 9 years old, showed real talent. Within 3 weeks, she was playing simple Mozart, her face lit up with joy. "Her name is Sophia," Catherine told Duke after class. "Single mother, working 2 jobs. The girl has natural ability, but they could never afford formal lessons. Now she has a chance." The history group started smaller, just 5 people, but grew quickly as word spread that Professor Whitmore was the real deal. James made history come alive, connecting past events to present circumstances, helping people understand the patterns that repeated across generations. Duke found himself attending every week, actually learning things his expensive education had somehow missed. On week 8, James did a session on the Great Depression, on families who lost everything through no fault of their own, on communities that came together to survive. Duke watched the faces of the people in the room, many of whom were living paycheck to paycheck, who understood intimately what it meant to be one crisis away from catastrophe. After the class, a man named Marcus, not Duke's security chief, but a tenant in his 50s, approached James. "Professor, I never finished high school. Dropped out when I was 16 to help my mum with bills. Listening to you talk, I realize how much I missed. Is there any way someone like me could get a GED at my age?" James did not hesitate. "Of course you can, and I will help you prepare for it if you want. We can start next week." Duke watched this exchange and felt something shift inside him. This was what changing the world actually looked like. Not billion-dollar deals or skyscrapers with his name on them, but one man in his 50s getting a second chance at education because someone cared enough to help. 3 months into the program, on a Tuesday evening, Duke received a call that changed everything. He was at the Cambridge property, helping Catherine set up for a community potluck dinner they had organized, when his phone rang. Unknown number. "Duke Harrison." "Mr. Harrison, This is Rebecca Whitmore Chen. I believe you know my parents, James and Catherine Whitmore. Duke's blood ran cold. The daughter, the one who had charged her own parents' rent to live in a garage, then evicted them. I know who you are. I need to speak with my parents. I have been trying to reach them, but their old phone numbers do not work anymore. Someone told me they might be staying with you. Why do you need to speak with them? Duke kept his voice neutral, professional. That is family business, Mr. Harrison. I would appreciate it if you would give me their contact information. No. Silence on the other end. Then, excuse me? I said no. Your parents are under my protection now. If you want to contact them, you tell me why and I will relay the message. They can decide if they want to respond. You have no right to keep me from my own parents. I have every right to protect them from people who hurt them. You threw them out, Rebecca. You made them homeless. They nearly died on the street because their own daughter could not be bothered to care. You do not understand the situation. My parents have always been irresponsible with money, always helping people who did not deserve it. I tried to teach them to be more practical, but they would not listen. Duke felt rage building in his chest. Your mother had a stroke. Your father has Parkinson's disease. They gave their life savings to your brother because he was in trouble, because that is what parents do. And when they needed help, you charged them rent they could barely afford and then evicted them anyway. My brother told me what happened, Rebecca said, her voice tight. He said some rich guy took them in, that you are setting them up with money. I want to make sure you are not taking advantage of them. Duke laughed, harsh and bitter. Taking advantage of them? I am giving them what you should have given them, a home, dignity, purpose. They work for me now. They earn their keep. They are building something beautiful. And you want to know the saddest part? They still love you. They still defend you when I suggest that you are a terrible daughter. That is the kind of people they are. I want to see them. Tell me why. The real reason. Another long silence. Then, quietly, my brother came back. He is in trouble again. Needs money. He thinks Mum and Dad might help him if he apologizes. I want to warn them, to tell them not to give him anything else. At least she was being honest now. Duke made a decision. I will tell them you called. I will give them your number. But I will also tell them exactly what you just told me. They will decide if they want contact. That is their choice, not mine, and certainly not yours. He hung up before she could respond. Duke told James and Catherine about the call that evening, after the potluck had ended and they were cleaning up together. He watched their faces carefully as he relayed the conversation. Catherine sat down heavily in one of the folding chairs. Michael is back. Our son is back. Rebecca did not say she wanted to reconnect, Duke said gently. She said she wanted to warn you that Michael is looking for money. Of course he is, James said, his voice flat. That is all we ever were to him. A bank account. You do not know that, Catherine protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Yes, I do, and so do you. James sat down beside his wife, taking her hand. Catherine, we need to face the truth about our children. We raised them, loved them, gave them everything we could. But somewhere along the way, they decided that what we gave was not enough. Or maybe they just became people we do not recognize. Either way, we cannot save them from themselves. Duke had never heard James sound so defeated. The old man had maintained optimism through homelessness, through illness, through every hardship. But this, the betrayal of his own children, had finally broken something in him. I want to see them, Catherine said suddenly. Both of them. I want to look my children in the eye and ask them how they could do this to us. I want answers. Catherine, James began, but she cut him off. No, James. We have spent 52 years building things, helping people, believing in the goodness of humanity. Our own children turned their backs on us, and we just accepted it. I want to know why. I need to know why. Duke understood. She needed closure, even if it hurt. I will arrange a meeting, he said. Neutral territory. I will be there with you, and I will make sure nothing happens that you do not want to happen. They met at Duke's office downtown, a conference room on the 20th floor with windows overlooking the city. Duke had his lawyer, Sharon Reeves, present as a witness. He wanted everything documented, everything legal, just in case. Rebecca arrived first, a woman in her early 50s, well-dressed, expensive jewelry, the look of someone who had never missed a meal or worried about where she would sleep. Behind her came a man Duke assumed was her husband, silent and uncomfortable. Michael showed up 20 minutes late, disheveled, nervous, the look of someone on the edge. He was younger than Rebecca, maybe 45, but looked older. Life had not been kind to him, or maybe he had not been kind to life. James and Catherine sat on one side of the conference table, Duke standing behind them like a guardian. Rebecca and Michael sat across from them, and the distance between them felt like miles. "Mom, Dad," Rebecca started, her voice carefully controlled. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." "We did not do it for you," James said quietly. "We did it for us. We need answers." Michael shifted in his seat, not making eye contact. Rebecca glanced at her brother, and Duke saw something pass between them. They had planned this, coordinated their approach. "We know we let you down," Rebecca said. "We know we should have done more to help when you lost the house. But you have to understand, we have our own families, our own responsibilities. We could not just drop everything." "We were not asking you to drop everything," Catherine said, her voice shaking. "We were asking you to care, to let us stay with you without charging us every penny we had, to help us find resources, make phone calls, anything. Instead, you made us feel like we were burdens." "You were burdens," Michael suddenly exploded. "For you have always been burdens. Your whole lives you gave money to strangers, helped people who were not even family, built things for communities that did not even appreciate you. And what did you save for yourselves? Nothing. You ended up homeless because you were too stupid to plan for your own future." The silence that followed was deafening. Catherine's face had gone pale, and James looked like he had been physically struck. Duke moved forward instinctively, placing a hand on James's shoulder. "That is enough," Duke said, his voice cold. "No, let him talk," James said, his eyes fixed on his son. "I want to hear this. All of it." Michael seemed to realize he had crossed a line, but the dam had broken. The words kept coming. "You want the truth? Fine. Rebecca and I grew up embarrassed by you. While other kids' parents were buying nice houses and taking vacations, you were giving our college fund money to build orphanages. You put strangers' kids through piano lessons while we wore hand-me-down clothes. You preached about helping others while your own family went without." "We never went without," Rebecca added, though her voice was quieter, less certain. "We had food, shelter, education, but we could have had more, should have had more." Catherine was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. James sat rigid, his jaw clenched so tight Duke could see the muscles working. "So this is about money," Duke said. "Not about love or family or care. Just money." "Easy for you to say," Michael shot back. "You are a millionaire. You do not know what it is like to grow up without." "Actually," Duke said, pulling out his phone and opening a document, "I know exactly what it is like. I grew up in a working-class family in South Boston. My father was a construction worker. My mother cleaned houses. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with my brother and me, sharing a room until I left for college. I paid for Harvard with scholarships, loans, and working 3 jobs. So do not tell me I do not understand." He set his phone down on the table, showing a photo of his childhood home. Small, modest, nothing like the mansion he owned now. "The difference between us," Duke continued, "is that when I made money I remembered where I came from. Your parents remembered where they came from too. They remembered what it was like to struggle, and they decided to help others who were struggling. That is not stupidity. That is character. Why are you really here?" Sharon Reeves spoke for the first time, her lawyer instincts sensing something beneath the surface. "What do you want from your parents?" Rebecca and Michael exchanged glances again. Finally, Rebecca spoke. "There is a family trust, from our grandfather. It pays out when our parents die, split between Michael and me. But if our parents are deemed mentally incompetent or unable to care for themselves, control of the trust passes to their children immediately." Everything clicked into place for Duke. "You were trying to have them declared incompetent. That is why you evicted them. Why you let them become homeless. You were building a case." "We were trying to protect family assets," Rebecca said defensively. "You were trying to steal from your own parents," Duke corrected. "How much is the trust worth?" Silence. "How much?" Duke demanded. $3.2 million, Michael muttered. James stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "You let us sleep on the street. Let us go hungry. Let your mother's health deteriorate, all so you could get your hands on money that was not even yours yet. Money you would have inherited anyway when we died naturally." "We have debts," Michael shouted. "I need that money now, not in 10 or 20 years. And I have medical bills," Rebecca added. "My husband lost his job. We are struggling too. So you thought you would make your own parents suffer more. Catherine's voice was steel now, all tears gone. You thought you would speed up our deaths or have us locked away so you could be comfortable. The accusation hung in the air. Neither Rebecca nor Michael denied it. Duke looked at Sharon. Can they do this? Can they have James and Catherine declared incompetent? They can try, Sharon said, but it would not hold up. Your clients are clearly competent. They have jobs. They manage their own affairs. They are contributing members of society. No judge would grant that petition. We could still file, Michael said desperately. We could make it difficult for you. Court battles, lawyers, expenses. Go ahead, Duke said calmly. I will pay for every lawyer, every expert witness, every penny it takes to fight you. And when we win, I will make sure everyone knows what you tried to do to your own parents. James raised his hand, silencing everyone. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. I want to say something and I want you both to listen carefully. He looked at his children, these people he and Catherine had raised, loved, sacrificed for. When you were children, we gave you everything we could, not material wealth but something more valuable. We taught you kindness, compassion, the importance of helping others. We showed you what it meant to build a life of meaning rather than just accumulating possessions. Dad, Rebecca started, but James held up his hand again. I am not finished. Somewhere along the way, you rejected those lessons. You decided that money mattered more than character, that comfort mattered more than family. That is your choice, and I will not try to change your minds. But I want you to understand something very clearly. He paused, looking at each of them in turn. As of today, you are no longer our children. Not legally, not emotionally, not in any way that matters. We will change our wills, remove you as beneficiaries, cut all ties. That $3.2 million, we are donating it, all of it, to charities that actually help people, to organizations that build the kind of world we always believed in. Catherine nodded, standing beside her husband. We gave you life, gave you love, gave you every advantage we could. And you threw it back in our faces. You made us homeless, vulnerable, desperate. You thought we were weak, thought we had no options. You were wrong. You cannot do this, Michael said, panic in his voice now. That is our inheritance. It was never yours, James corrected. It was ours to do with as we pleased, and we are choosing to give it to people who will actually appreciate it, who will use it to make the world better, instead of just making themselves comfortable. You are going to regret this, Rebecca said, standing up. We will fight you. We will contest the will. We will sue. We will make your lives miserable. You already tried that, Catherine said softly, and we survived. We are still here, still standing, still together. You cannot hurt us anymore. We will not let you. Duke watched his clients, these two elderly people who had been through so much, standing firm against their own children. He felt overwhelming pride and overwhelming sadness all at once. After Rebecca and Michael left, shouting threats and accusations until security escorted them out, James and Catherine sat in the conference room in silence. Duke dismissed Sharon and sat with them, not speaking, just being present. Finally, Catherine spoke. Did we do the right thing? Yes, James said without hesitation. We gave them every chance. They made their choices. Now we make ours. But they are our children. Our babies. How did they become such cruel people? I do not know, James admitted. Maybe we gave them too much freedom. Maybe not enough structure. Maybe they were just born with something missing that we could not fix. Or maybe they are just human beings who made bad choices. Either way, we cannot save them from themselves. Duke thought about his own brother David, about the choices David had made, the addiction that had claimed him. Some people could be saved. Others chose not to be saved, and you could not force salvation on someone who did not want it. What happens now? Duke asked. Now, James said, standing and helping Catherine to her feet, we go back to Cambridge. We have a history class tonight, and tomorrow Catherine is teaching 3 piano students. We have work to do, lives to touch, a community to build. Just like that? Duke asked. Just like that, Catherine confirmed. We spent too many years trying to fix our children, trying to make them into people they did not want to be. We are not going to waste whatever time we have left on that same battle. We are going to focus on the people who actually want our help, who appreciate what we offer. They left the office building together, and Duke drove them back to Cambridge in silence. When they arrived at the building, Sophia, the 9-year-old piano prodigy, was waiting on the front steps with her mother. "Miss Catherine," she called out, "can I show you something? I learned a new piece." Catherine's face lit up instantly. "Of course, sweetheart. Let us go inside." Duke watched them walk away, James and Catherine with this child who adored them, who saw them not as failures or embarrassments, but as teachers, mentors, heroes. This was their family now. Not blood, but choice. The Cambridge property transformed over the next 6 months into something Duke had never imagined possible. The community room hosted activities 7 days a week. Catherine taught piano to 23 students now, ranging from age 5 to 67. James ran his history discussion group, but he had also started a tutoring program, helping 6 adults study for their GEDs. Marcus, the man who had asked about finishing high school, passed his GED exam in April and enrolled in community college classes in May. He credited James with changing his life. "I thought I was too old to learn," he told Duke one evening. "Professor Whitmore showed me that you are never too old to become who you should have been." Sophia, the piano prodigy, performed in a recital at a local music school and received a partial scholarship for advanced lessons. Her mother cried through the entire performance. "My daughter has a future now," she told Catherine afterward, "because you saw something in her that I could not afford to develop." Duke attended events at the property at least twice a week now. He had cut back on his business dealings, delegating more to his executive team, focusing on properties that actually housed people rather than just making money. He found himself caring more about tenant satisfaction than profit margins, about building communities rather than just buildings. His therapist, Dr. Chen, noticed the change immediately. "You seem different, Duke. Lighter, more present." "I found purpose," he said simply. "Turns out making money is not very fulfilling when that is all you do." But the real change came on a June evening when Duke received a call from a number he did not recognize. He almost did not answer, but something made him pick up. "Duke Harrison." "Mr. Harrison, this is Patricia Whitmore. I'm James's younger sister. I'm calling from Oregon." Duke felt his heart rate increase. "Family. More family. I am listening. I just found out what happened to James and Catherine, what my nephew and niece did to them. I've been trying to reach them for months, but their old numbers did not work. A friend finally tracked them down to your property in Cambridge. I want to come see them. I want to help if I can." "Why should I believe you?" Duke asked carefully. "Their own children betrayed them. Why should their family be any different?" "Because I know what it is like to lose everything," Patricia said quietly. "My husband died 3 years ago. Cancer. The medical bills took everything we had. I lost my house, lived with friends, worked 3 jobs to get back on my feet. I know what James and Catherine went through, because I went through it too. And if I had known they were struggling, I would have done anything to help them, anything." Patricia Whitmore arrived in Cambridge 2 weeks later. She was 70 years old, lean and weathered like someone who had worked hard her entire life. She drove herself from Oregon in a 15-year-old Toyota, making the trip in 4 days, sleeping in rest stops to save money on hotels. Duke met her at the Cambridge property, introducing himself before taking her up to James and Catherine's apartment. He knocked on the door, and when James opened it, the look on his face was something Duke would never forget. "Patty," James whispered. "Is that really you?" "Jimmy," Patricia said, using a nickname Duke had never heard. "I came as soon as I found out." They embraced, and Duke saw decades of separation dissolve in that moment. Catherine appeared behind James, and when she saw Patricia, she burst into tears. "We thought you had forgotten us," Catherine said. "We tried to call after we lost the house, but your number was disconnected. I changed numbers after Tom died. Too many creditors calling. I tried to reach you too, but your phones were off. I thought maybe you were traveling, living your retirement." "I had no idea." Patricia was crying now too. "Rebecca told me you were fine, that you had moved to a retirement community, that you did not want visitors. I believed her." The pieces fell into place. Rebecca had deliberately kept Patricia away, had lied to everyone to isolate James and Catherine, to make them more vulnerable, easier to control. "She lied to you," James said. "We never went to a retirement community. We were on the street, Patricia, homeless." Patricia's face went white. No, she would not do that to her own parents." "She did," Catherine confirmed. "She and Michael both. They wanted us declared incompetent so they could access a family trust. They thought if we were desperate enough, It would be easier to prove we could not care for ourselves. Patricia sat down heavily on the couch, processing this information. I knew Rebecca had changed over the years, become harder, more focused on money, but I never thought she would be capable of this. Duke spoke up. She tried. We stopped her. James and Catherine are under my protection now. They work for me, earn a good living, have this apartment rent-free, full medical coverage. They are safe. Patricia looked at Duke with new respect. Thank you. Thank you for being the family we should have been. Patricia stayed in Cambridge, not in the same building but in a small apartment 3 blocks away that Duke helped her secure. She got a job at a local library part-time, enough to supplement her social security. But most of her free time she spent at the Cambridge property, becoming part of the community James and Catherine had built. She had a gift for gardening, and she transformed the small courtyard behind the building into a vegetable garden where tenants could grow food together. Children loved her, and she read stories to them on Saturday afternoons in the community room. "This is what family should be," James said one evening, as he, Catherine, Patricia, and Duke sat together after a community potluck. Not blood, but choice. Not obligation, but love. Duke thought about his own family, long gone now. His parents had died years ago, his brother David decades before that. He had spent his adult life alone, convincing himself he preferred it that way. But sitting here with these 3 people who had adopted him as much as he had adopted them, he realized he had been lying to himself. "I want to tell you something," Duke said suddenly. "All of you." They turned to him, waiting. "When I found James and Catherine outside my gate that night, I almost drove past, almost decided it was not my problem. For about 30 seconds I was going to be the kind of person who sees suffering and looks away. And if I had made that choice, if I had been that person, I would have missed out on the most important thing that has ever happened to me." "What is that?" Catherine asked gently. "Family," Duke said simply. "Real family. The kind you choose, the kind that chooses you back. You 3 have given me something I thought I would never have. Purpose, connection, a reason to be better than I was." Patricia reached over and squeezed his hand. "You gave us our lives back, Duke. You saved us." "No," Duke corrected. "We saved each other." The peace lasted almost a year. Then, on a cold February morning, Rebecca and Michael showed up at the Cambridge property with lawyers and a court order demanding a psychiatric evaluation of James and Catherine. Duke got the call from Marcus, the tenant who had gotten his GED. "Mr. Harrison, there are people here causing a scene. They are claiming they have the right to remove the professor and Miss Catherine for mental health evaluations." Duke was there in 15 minutes. He found Rebecca and Michael in the lobby with 2 lawyers and 2 men who claimed to be psychiatric evaluators. James and Catherine stood behind them, and a crowd of tenants had gathered, forming a protective circle around the elderly couple. "You have no authority here," Duke said, positioning himself in front of James and Catherine. "Leave now, or I will call the police." "We have a court order," one of the lawyers said, holding up papers. "Signed by a judge, requiring psychiatric evaluation based on concerns about their mental competency raised by family members." Duke looked at the papers. They were real, legally binding, but something was off. "Sharon," he said into his phone, which he had called on the way over and kept connected. "Are you reading this?" He had been holding the phone up, letting Sharon see the documents through video. "I am," Sharon's voice came through the speaker. "And I can tell you that order is based on false information. The petitioners claim James and Catherine were living in squalor, unable to care for themselves, showing signs of dementia. All provably false. I can get this overturned within an hour, but in the meantime they technically have the legal right to conduct the evaluation." Rebecca smiled, triumphant. "You see? You cannot stop us. The law is on our side." "Then let them do it," Catherine said suddenly, stepping forward. "Right here, right now, evaluate us, test our mental competency. We have nothing to hide." "Catherine," James started, but she cut him off. "No, James. Let them do their worst. Let them ask their questions, run their tests. We will prove once and for all that we are exactly who we have always been. 2 people who chose to live differently, who chose helping others over hoarding wealth. That is not mental illness. That is called having values." The evaluation took place in the community room, with Duke, Sharon, and 20 tenants as witnesses. The 2 evaluators, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, conducted standard cognitive tests, memory recall, problem-solving, basic questions about daily living. James and Catherine passed everything flawlessly. James recited the Gettysburg Address from memory, then discussed its historical context and significance. Catherine played Rachmaninoff on the piano, a piece requiring extraordinary mental and physical coordination. "Can you explain your current living situation?" one evaluator asked. "We live in a comfortable apartment," James said. "We work for Duke Harrison, managing community programs in this building. We earn $5,000 per month plus benefits. We pay our bills, manage our own health care, participate actively in community life. We teach, we create, we contribute. And you feel you are capable of making your own financial decisions. We made the decision to give away a $3.2 million inheritance to charity rather than leave it to our children who abandoned us," Catherine said calmly. "That was a deliberate, carefully considered choice made with full understanding of the consequences. Does that sound like dementia to you?" The evaluator looked uncomfortable. "No, ma'am, it does not." After 2 hours, both evaluators signed documents stating clearly that James and Catherine Whitmore showed no signs of cognitive impairment, dementia, or mental incompetency. They were fully capable of managing their own affairs. Rebecca's face went red with rage. "This is ridiculous. They are manipulating you. Enough," Sharon cut her off. "I have documented everything here today. The false statements you made to obtain that court order constitute perjury and fraud. I will be filing charges. Additionally, we will be pursuing a restraining order preventing you from contacting or coming near your parents again." "You cannot do that," Michael said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Watch us," Duke said coldly. "You tried to destroy your parents. You failed. Now deal with the consequences." Security escorted Rebecca and Michael out of the building. The tenants erupted in applause. 3 years after that rainy night when Duke Harrison found 2 strangers outside his gate, he stood in that same community room in Cambridge, surrounded by 200 people celebrating the opening of the James and Catherine Whitmore Community Center. The building had been completely renovated. The community room expanded, a performance space added, classrooms for tutoring and teaching, a commercial kitchen for cooking classes, and a garden terrace on the roof where Patricia grew vegetables year-round. But more than physical spaces, they had built something intangible. A community, a family, a place where people cared for each other, where no one was alone, where helping others was not considered foolish but heroic. Sophia, now 12, performed Beethoven on the restored Steinway, flawless and beautiful. Marcus gave a speech about how education had changed his life, and he was now enrolled at State University studying social work. 32 children received piano lessons from Catherine. 47 adults had gotten their GEDs through James's tutoring program. Duke stood with James, Catherine, and Patricia, watching the celebration, and felt something he had not felt in 30 years, complete peace. "Thank you," he said to them, "for everything." "No," James said, putting his hand on Duke's shoulder. "Thank you. You saw us when we were invisible. You helped us when we were helpless. You gave us not just survival, but purpose." "I did what anyone should have done," Duke said. "But most people would not have," Catherine said. "That is what makes you special, Duke. That is what makes this special." Duke thought about that night in the rain, about the decision to stop instead of driving past, about opening his trunk for an umbrella and finding instead the family he had been missing his entire life. He thought about David, about the photograph that said, "He's going to change the world," about how his brother had believed in him even when Duke had not believed in himself. "I did change the world," Duke said quietly, "just not the way I thought I would." And as music filled the room and people laughed and ate and connected, Duke Harrison understood finally what his brother had known all along. Changing the world never starts with grand gestures or massive wealth. It starts with seeing another human being in need and choosing, despite every reason not to stop and help. Everything else follows from that one moment of simple human kindness.